Must be in your room. All right, we're back. And we are well, sorry, 1004. We are in the fall 2016 semester at Georgian, and it's week 2, part 2 of our broadcast. The part 1 part was all building our UI again. We did kind of a hello world last time with very simple kind of controls. And we're just kind of revisiting some of the stuff we did. I want to make my calculate button, so it's going to calculate the subtotal. The discount percent here, as an example, is the discount that I'm going to get. Notice if I put in a percentage total, right? Take the percent of the discount and then subtract it from the subtotal to produce our total. All right, that's what it's going to be. That's really what the application looks like it does. So a little bit of calculation, nothing that we can't handle. But remember the key points. 1, everything that's inside of my form controls are all strings. Convert them. That's number 1. The meat and bones of everything that's going to happen is going to happen in the right now anyway, in the calculate button. The calculate button, that's where all the magic is going to happen. It doesn't have to be, right? For example, if I can't type anything in here because text boxes, right? Which means that the percentage that I'm displaying in the discount percent that says 10%, right? I can't select it. It's always going to be 10%. So I might as well, if it's going to be fixed, I might as well just display 10% in there. And then use that as a constant, in this particular case anyway, as something that I'm going to be used to calculate the totals. So I'll do it on the code behind file based on 10%. 10% is the discount we have here. Make a form that allowed me to change the discount percentage, right? Then obviously this is the wrong kind of control. It wouldn't be some kind of text box that's fixed, something else. Maybe it's going to be a pull down, right? Some kind of other kind of control, like a drop down list. So here's my control. These are all going to be, the only thing I've changed here is so that they're the read only text boxes are white. That's the only thing I've changed in my UI layout. What I want to do is I want to kind of put in here in my text box to kind of adhere to what I'm doing. So that's one thing we missed. In my text, I want to kind of put in 10%, right? So that's my discount percentage, 10%. And if you notice, that's 0. It doesn't really matter because text 10.0%. I can put it as whatever I like, right? Remember, we're going to be calculating this on the back end, right? So when I enter my subtotal, immediately when I enter my subtotal, it's not going to do anything until I click my calculate button. And then I'm going to see. So let's assume for now, from an input validation perspective, that the user is always going to be perfect with input validation. Any problem yet, okay? And then we'll assume there's always going to be problems, okay? So the first assumption is no problems. I want to make my discount amount come out and my total amount come out depending on my subtotal. Work. I need to be able to say something like this. My subtotal, right, times 10% or 0.1 discount, right? Or discount is equal to my subtotal times 0.1. That's my first thing. And then what I want to do is the discount amount, right, is going to be, that's what the discount is. That's the discount amount, right? And then my total is going to be total, minus my discount amount. That's what it's going to be. So I've got to be able to figure that calculation out and lay this out here. One thing to note is that it's all going to happen in my calculate button. Therefore, I want to make an event handler. And there's a couple ways to do that. I can double click on the calculate button to create that event. So let's do that. If I double click, it brings up my code behind file, right? So this is my C# file. I'm just going to unclick this one for here so we can see more, have more room. And I made it really big. I can kind of zoom in and out. By using the control key, then scrolling in and out, you can change the font size of your editor, right? So you can kind of move in and out like that. Notice that it's already taken the name of the button, calculate button, click event. There are several types of events, like I showed you guys last time, right? This is just a click event. It comes with 2 objects, the sender object, arguments, right? The sender object is which object was clicked, right? That's what it tells you. So in this case, it's the calculate button. However, if I use the shared event handler, which means I have more than one button that point to the same event, then I could use the switch statement to decide which of my objects was clicked by using the sender object, and whatever the name is of that the sender, that into a button, and we'll talk about casting later on, right? I can decide what the name is of the button. You know what the name is of the button, then I can make different things happen with the same event handlers. We'll talk about that later. And the event arguments is what kind of event is firing, right? And the sender object also has other properties. Like for example, where did I click? Like literally on the button, what pixel did I click? What's the X and Y coordinates of my clicking? Might be really important in some applications. But for now, what I want to do is notice that also my method, this is a method. This is an event handler method that's part of my form. My form is a class that is the colon in C# keyword in Java, right? So this is using inheritance. And what I'm doing here is I'm saying this. I'm saying form is inheriting or extends the form class. That's what it's doing. So my form class is a built-in class, Windows Forms. Notice that I'm also having a bunch of these things. One of them is one of the namespaces that I'm importing, and I can, if I was doing things in C++, for people who like C++ or C, I would use the import keyword to say something like import system.windows.forms. That's what I could do if it was pure C++. However, if I was doing Visual C++ here with Visual Studio, I would still use the using statement, whether it's C++, C#, languages, VB, it's all using. When I use the using statement, I'm including those libraries inside my C# code. Okay, so I'm saying, hey, include the system.windows.forms library, the forms class, so that I can inherit it in my invoice total form. That's what I'm doing here. So my invoice total form is packed full of these methods that we don't immediately see, right? Because it's inheriting from the form class that exists in the system. This calculate button click is a method that's not inside the form class. This is our own custom method in the form class. Remember, whenever we extend class, our subclass is always larger, right? Our superclass is always smaller than our subclasses because add stuff to the subclass, right? My child class, if you will, you can call it different names, superclass and subclass, class and child class, base class and derived class, they're all the same things, right? They're just different. There's different ways of talking about and the thing that I'm deriving from the blueprint, or the thing that I'm basing on the blueprint. Okay, so my calculate button click does not exist in my default form class. I've double clicked. When I double click, it auto event wire ups. That's what I'm going to say. It auto wires up event. It actually writes it up for us, right? Just like it did in web forms, right? So, calculate button click. I want to put in there. So what do I want it to do? I need to read all my values. That's the first thing I need to do.
Only write code when you double click on something.
It can write. You can write your own code whether it's double click or not.
But I mean, like, I have a bunch of things. It's because I accidentally double clicked on it.
You can get rid of it later. We'll get rid of it all.
Just curious.
Yeah, but you would if you double clicked on stuff accidentally. You'll have a bunch of stuff, and you can get rid of them later on by going into the lightning bolt that's next to item that it's somehow created an event for. In view on the right side, there's a lightning bolt that tells you all the events. If you just erase the lightning bolt, and then it'll get rid of that. So here's my calculate button click, and what I want to do here is I want to talk about things I want to do. So the first thing is I'm just putting in some comments. So this is the way we do comments in C#, right? Just like we do the same thing in JavaScript and in other languages, other C-style languages. If I want to do what we talked about before, JavaDoc equivalent, I want to do the triple //. So on the top of my method, I can go triple // and it adds in automatically for me, right? Triple //. The summary will be something like this, right? It tells me what this thing is about. This is the event handler. That's what this thing is, right? And it has two arguments. So param name is sender. It kind of looks at my method and it decides what my parameter names are. E for event. Okay, that's what it does. So if I ever ask you to do comments, this would suffice. I give you a little bit of a comment of what this thing is, my calculate button event handler, right? In here, what I want to use comments to almost like a little bit of pseudocode for myself to understand what I want to do. When you first do Windows Forms, you're like, where do I start? The first thing I want to do is I want to be able to read values from my text boxes, right? So I want to be able to read from the text boxes, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is, after I read the values, I want to convert them, right, from strings, likely, or some kind of double, right? So convert string values, we'll call them doubles, right? Convert string values to doubles. I want to do that. So once I've converted them to doubles, right, and I can do that when I'm reading it too. I want to calculate. So in order for me to calculate my my discount amount, right? Discount amount is equal to, right, the subtotal amount times the discount percent, which is 10%. So discount, put this in as a variable, right? Discount amount is equal to my subtotal, right, multiplied by times 0.1. Right, that's my discount amount. And the next one is, if you notice what I'm talking about, is my total is my subtotal minus my discount amount. Total is equal to subtotal minus my discount amount. Okay. And then discount amount and the text box, related text box, and display my total in the related text box, my total text box. Right, so those are all the things I want to do when I click on this button. Is there anything else I missed? By the way, I didn't do any validation. I've got all these steps. I got to do it right now, right? I told you it's a simple form, but the devil's in the details. I hate to say that, and there's lots of details here we can go into. Read the values from the text box. This is the first thing I want to do. Well, if I want to read the values, and if I'm doing everything in this one form, variables. Okay, how do I assign it to variables? Well, I have some variables. I have the discount amount variable. I have the total variable, right? And I have the discount. I have the this 0.1, which is the percentage. I could use it as a literal. I could leave it as literal, and I've got the subtotal. So I've got a bunch of variables. Let's get these variables going. Variable number one. All right, I've got my. I say something like this. If I go double, I could do that. I could declare a double, and my double would the first double that I'm going to put into play. By the way, there's double, right? What's the difference between double with a capital D? Do you think, and double with a lowercase d? Yes. So if I press double with a capital D, I'm using the double class, which is different than the double data type, the lowercase d in this case, right? Notice that it glows blue, this dark blue. And if I go double with a capital D, it's this light blue color. This tells me it's a class, right? Whereas double this way, it's blue, just like it's a keyword, right? Like a data type. So I want to make it double, and it's got to be the first one that I want, which is my subtotal. So double subtotal. Let's make them on each separate line. Some people will tell you in coding that we should comma. Let's not do commas here. Let's do everything we put in. We'll put it as a separate line. It makes it for better clarity. It's not going to kill your code style or anything like that, and it allows us to kind of review each of the objects. And I can also add comments on each of them if I need to, right? So subtotal. The next one would be, if I look down at what in order, right? That I've things that I've discount amount. So discount amount, right? It's double. I want to declare my variables first, right? And then I have my total, right? Did I miss anything? I could put in a point, that point want as the discount percent. I could put that in. And I highly recommend you do that, right? So I'll probably do that up here, right? So constant, right? Which is what is it like in Java? In Java, final, right? So final, constant, same thing, const, right? So const, it's still a double. I'm going to make this, call this discount percent, and I'll sign it right away as 0.1. I need to use the semicolon to end off my lines, just like we did before, and I've got these things. So I've described these are my local variables, right? They're local to the calculate button click event. We don't care about propagating them anywhere, so we don't have to make them as a class variable right now or member variable, right? They're just local to my thing. Now, this is not the only way we can write this. There's many ways we can do this. I'm just making it so it's simple. Okay, so number one. Now, this is cool, but I want to do two things. Not only do I want to assign the variable, I could convert it. We'll do it in 2 lines here. Let's convert it. So we'll say something like this. We'll say subtotal is equal to my subtotal text box. Take a look that it comes up. That's why I put it in like that, right? Subtotal text box dot text. But I'm going to have a problem. It's going to say, meh, it doesn't work because subtotal text is a string value, and if I hover over, here's some troubleshooting. It'll say cannot implicitly convert type string to double. So I need to use a convert method. And in front of this, give some space. I can do something like convert. I can start typing convert dot. Right? There's my to double. Convert to double. Brackets. That's how easy it is. I can convert the stuff that I get from text into double. Convert to double. So now I get the value from the text box. I convert it to double and assign it to my subtotal, my local variable subtotal. By the way, there's many ways to skin a cat in this case. I could do all my calculations by converting them and multiplying and blah, 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 and outputting them later. For you guys, so it's not confusing. Make sense? So that's the first thing. So what I've done, notice that this little underline comes up here. These little green ones means that it's not used. That says, hey, you never use discount percent, right? I'm reading them in now. This is the second part, right? So I'm reading my values in from my text boxes and then converting them at the same time. So I'm reading them and converting. These two steps are happening right now. Okay, the next piece is after I've read my subtotal, which is my discount amount, right? So I'll say discount amount is equal to convert dot to double discount amount. I want to take my now do I have to convert to double? Right? Because I already converted to double subtotal and multiply it by my discount percent. That's what I have to do here. So I can take which is my subtotal, and multiply it by my discount percent. Easy, right? And now I have my discount amount, whatever that is. It's a double. So I got my discount amount. I haven't printed them out yet. I'm just changing them right now. And then my total, right, is equal to my subtotal minus my discount amount. Like we said, these are all the calculations we're making. So I've done all this up to here. So I can get rid of all this. This is just my pseudocode. Okay, now I want to display them, and what I want to do to display them is convert them back, right? So I want to do something like this. Display my discount amount and my total. So I want to say discount amount text box properly. If I start typing discount amount, right? Dot text, the text value or the text property is equal to my discount amount, right? The actual variable dot toString. Converting it back to string. Why? Because I can't put a double inside of a text value. I got to go back the way again. You might say, wow, this is a pain in the ass. It's part of what we do. right? We convert from string, make our calculations, and throwing back out into the UI as a string, right? Same. So I say my total. You can see how I'm going to do this. Total text box. Here it is. Total text box.text. Think about what it is that I'm accessing. I'm using kind of similar names to my total, right? .toString. Method that belongs to all objects, right? All data types. It's part of all objects in C#, just like it is in all objects in Java. Convert to string, always. If I take an object or some kind of value or data, and I want to convert it to string, it's there. It allows me to do that. Convert.toDouble for my first one only, because I'm converting my subtotal. Once I got my subtotal, everything else rolls from there, right? Rid of all this. Now, we have some problems that we're going to have, right? Let's just check it out. So save. I've got all this stuff here, right? So I'm going to press Control F5, run without debugging in this case, and value in there, a valid value, please. What if I put in a value of 1? It works, right? I got some problems here. My problems are that the discount amount, right, looks like, right, because I got 1, and I put 0.1, and this is 0.9, right? How do I format my string? So I got to format my string. I can convert it, right, to string, but I want to format it, right? How do I do that? We're going to have to talk about that in a second, because we have to format it back out, right? Type in some other value like 532. Calculate again. Every time I click calculate, it'll try and calculate the total. This is correct. It's ugly, but it's correct. Look at our example. Our example shows dollar signs. Dollar sign here, but it does show dollar signs there. So the quick and dirty. What if I wanted just to add a dollar sign? What do I do? It's pretty simple, right? Just add a string with a dollar sign. I get toString anyway. Uh-oh, look, my exit button isn't complete. I didn't fix that one. I got to fix that one in a second. But so I want to kind of do one of these. I want to say, well, I know that my text value's got to be a string. Anything that goes in here, right? String, and then convert the other value to string. Like for example, something like this. That's valid, just like it would be in JavaScript. Add a space, like in here, I could do this. This is not very good though, and we'll talk about why, right? Later on. I got this ugly dollar sign, right? And if I want to convert back, I got to strip my dollar sign off, right? I'm putting it out there, right? Just because, you know, it's kind of funky. Well, let's see what I get now. So I'm going to kind of run this again, assuming that everything goes well. And I type in a value like 56, right? And then I click calculate, and then bam. Kind of didn't do the right thing there, right? Didn't add my 0, right? I format my string, even on this side, because I'm not getting 60 cents or 40 cents. It's just 5.6, right? I could. Let's see if I can make that exit button work. How do I make the exit button work? We did this last time. Who remembers what to do? What do I put in there for exiting the application? You don't remember? Application.exit. The application is application.exit. Right? And it's a method. So you need to put brackets in there. Okay? And if I click the exit button, I'm done. Right? So all the buttons work. Basic functionality is there, but I need to fix it. And there's some problems, like I said. When I have my toString method, wouldn't it be nice if our toString method had other options? Well, there are overloads for the method, if you notice, right? One of them is this. When I convert toString, whatever it is, straight to string, a raw string, I want to convert, and I want to use my format provider, right, which converts the numeric value of the instance to its equivalent string representation using the specified culture-specific format information. An object that supplies culture-specific formatting information. option. Other option, string format, converts the numeric value of the instance to its equivalent string representation using the specified format. A numeric format string. Okay, I like it. This one is, converts the numeric value of its instance to the equivalent string representation using the specified format and culture-specific format information. So I know I can put something else in there other than just nothing, right? That's another option I have. So let's try a couple things. For example, let's get rid of the $sign just for a second, right? And without doing anything, for example, I can right-click on my toString method, right? And if you notice, I have some options. If I go down, I can peek definition. I could go to my definition, right? And I want to show you this in a second. I want to peek on my definition of this function, or method. So here's my definition, right? It actually shows me each of my different overloads. So if I click onto this, it'll show me the difference. So it'll actually show me all the difference right here inside C#. The value of this instance specified by the format, right? So if I really want to inspect what each of these things do, also notice that it's security safe critical is an attribute, a modifier. I know this is something you've never seen before maybe, but think about it as a decorator. In C#, we use decorators with square brackets to kind of add additional functionality to simple methods, right? Security safe critical, what it does is it identifies types of members and safely accessible by transparent code. So in other words, if someone types in something like some kind of other scripting to mess me up, it'll fail. Catch it and strip it. Okay? That's really, really cool. Doesn't really tell me how to use it, though. Let's take a guess if you didn't know. And then I'll show you where to go to actually get the definition and how to use it, right? For example, normally, in most cases, or I kind of go over here and I press F1 to go to the MSDN library to get all the definition. It says unusable, unable to service requests. I love it. It's fantastic. So the other way to do it is to actually search for it, by the way. So if I went to the toString method, toString C#, right, format, from the object, the superclass object toString method that's built into all objects. So here it is, string, which means I can override it as well. Notice that it says virtual. Virtual in C# means that I have the ability to override my toString method if I create my own class. You guys forgot how to do that with class and object. This is part of polymorphism, right, where we can morph an object that already exists into our own functionality. So we keep on going down, and if you notice, there's some examples of our code, right? For we convert something with a toString method, right? Overriding the object toString method, we tells it how to override, how to what kind of interfaces it has. It gives us some other examples here, and notice, there's a format string, right? The G, right? I'm just pointing it out because there's some really good examples online of what it can do. An A, here's an A, right? So we need the string format. Here's something closer to what we want. So looks like C2, right, means that this is currency with 2 decimal places. I don't have to work very hard. It's right here. Now, you may not see that, but we'll put it in here so you can see. And so you have to put it in quotations. That's the format string. So C2. So currency with 2 decimal places. Let's put that in. Currency with 2 decimal places, right? And let's try this now and see what happens. I've taken away the, wait, what's happening here? Oh yeah, I'm stuck. I love this lovely stuff up here when it happens. Oh yeah. Let's see if it even saved any of my stuff. I love it. This is a VM thing. It's not a Visual Studio problem. It's a Tom problem. So please ignore it. Don't look at the man behind the curtain because he's an ugly man. All right, let's go back. And one day when it comes up, hopefully we won't have broken code like this, right? Like how it is. Let's open up our our application. So we're going to open, because it completely crashed. I want to look at under documents, which is really bad. Go, and it's the wrong document because I'm looking at my virtual machine. Bear with me while I do such crazy things. Yeah. Did it work? Thank you. I appreciate that vote of confidence on your system. Let's see if it really worked on my system. Yes, I love it. Let's go to my documents, and I'll go to 1004 and this one, and choose this one. Open. Let's see if my stuff got corrupted. That happens too. This is all part of being a developer, right? Things crash, things don't work. And if it actually retained the last change that I made, right? So if I put in 540 and press calculate, so I get this amount and it adds the extra zeros, right? So that's the kind of stuff that I want you to be able to do. Think about, I've just converted, but what if I put in, and this is where we kind of come into formatting, what if I put in a value like A, right? So calculate, oh man, I got a problem, right? That I'm going to have, right, is I've got an irregular number. I don't have a number. I'm trying to convert into a symbol or something else, and I can't convert a symbol into a double. I can't. It's impossible. It won't do it. Cool things we can do, and I recommend whenever we do some kind of conversion or anything like that, we use. There's a couple ways we can do it. We can use a try catch, right? And you've seen try catch in Java. That's one option. Also, there's also we can do a try parse, right? Which is something totally different. A try parse is something like a convert, right? But what happens is if it doesn't, if it doesn't convert, then it won't work, right? I like to use a try catch. It's more efficient, right? And I want to be able to do that. So if the try catch doesn't work, I don't want to do any of this stuff, right? Which makes sense. It's almost like saying, hey, if I can't do this calculation, I'm going to get an error. We're kind of getting into exception handling, but this is a perfect time to do that, right? So let's try this out. So I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say, now if I don't know how to do a try catch in C#, I can type in try, tab, and it's going to put in my code for me, right? So here's my try catch. Now who remembers what a try catch is from Java? You guys should have done exception handling in Java, yeah? Same thing. There's no difference here. So what it's going to say is, whatever's in the try block, this piece here, it's going to try and execute. And if it fails because of an error, right, then it's going to throw an exception, and it's going to happen in the catch block. And throw back some kind of error message in here. Please enter valid data, right? That's an example, right? So what I want to do is I want to take all this stuff. I don't want to do any of this stuff if I get erroneous data. Kind of, oops, undo. Cut this. The try catch, this is one way of doing it. By the way, I'll show you another way in a second. And press paste. That's one way. Let's undo that. I could also, right? I believe if I press the control key and the up arrow, or is it the alt key? Yeah, the alt key, move everything up to where it's supposed to be. Both ways work, right? So if you want to move things around in the editor, right? And if I press tab, I can tab in to kind of make it look pretty or prettier. In my catch, I can have an exception. I can print out the exception if I want, but I know it's not a valid value. Whatever the person's entering in there, a alpha or some other character or whatever, a funny face, some other value, if it's not right, I want it to stop. I want to get the error. So I'm going to say something like this. I want to create a message box. And I want you to think of a message box as almost like an alert in JavaScript, right? It comes up, it's a modal box, which means I have to click onto it in order for it to go away, right? Alt and up arrow. If you have to highlight everything, Alt and up arrow, and I'll move everything up into that space. Or you can press Control X, cut it, and Control V to paste, whatever works better for you. So what I want to do is I want to create a message box. Okay, a message box is an object, right? To create a new message box, I need to instantiate a new object, right? So let's see if I can do this. So if I go message box, notice that it glows blue, right? For example, I want to create a message. Make it so it's an anonymous message box that comes up too, by the way. I don't have to name a message, but it's always better to kind of come up with a message box that gives me an object. So my message box is just an alert. I just want you to think about this. That comes up, it's a pop-up that pops up on top of everything else that says, hey, something's wrong. And what I want to do is I want to kind of create a new message box that let's say something like error message box. That's what I'm going to call it. Something like new message box, which is a new message box. Notice that I'm going to have in here, right, some issues if I did it this way. If you assume that the message box was correct, I'm using the new keyword. And it says message box does not contain a constructor that takes 0 arguments. Well, give me some code hinting, C#. What are the options that I have for my message box? Create my message box instead. It says message box does not contain a constructor that takes 0 arguments. Okay. Well, I know what it does. It needs a message, right? That's one of them. Something like this. It's going to say there's 2 parts. There's the title bar of the message and the actual message that's in the message box, right? Just like the alert in JavaScript. First, do you think it's the message inside or the title bar that comes up first? Title bar. Okay, so we'll say input error, and then the title, the message that comes into my message box, which will be something like invalid entered. I'm still getting an error. And if I go over to the message box, if we assume that this is how it works, it says does not contain a constructor that takes 2 arguments. All right. Here's why, right? My message box, a new message box like this, right? My message box in the real world, if I was going to see it, is a little different than what we know. So if I go message box, again, if you were to wanting to inspect what it looks like, let me make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. It'll give you an example of how message box works. And I know I'm kind of jumping the gun in terms of giving you some tools, but these are some of the tools you need in order for you to troubleshoot. Shoot with the debug.writeLine. We can do that, and I'll show you how to do that. But the other way to do it is to use the show method. So here's my show method. It's going to give you some, normally what it does, it also gives you some examples in the code. So example, here's my message, you did not da-da-da-da. And then here's my message box buttons. So I can define my buttons. And then my dialog result is equal to the result. And then I can say something like this. Show whatever the message is. So it's actually a static object, which you don't have to instantiate like this. So what I'm saying is you can do something like message box.show. And then that would work. I don't care about the result, right? Because I don't care about what happens, what buttons he clicks, right? As long as he clicks OK, we're good to go. Here's the other thing you can do. Along with the message box.show, I could always do a debug.writeLine. And the debug.writeLine needs some kind of error. Well, I want to create an object. Here's the exception. Object of the exception called exception, lowercase, right? And what I want to do something like this, exception, but the exception.message, right? The exception.message is the message that the type of exception that I'm getting. But notice that the debug doesn't work because I don't built in by default into my C# code. I need to control dot and install my system diagnostics using system diagnostics in order for me to get that. So on the top, you notice that I have a new using, which is using system.diagnostics in order for me to do debug.writeLine. And I got that by pressing control dot. If there's something that doesn't exist, I can press control dot on top of a class that I don't have, and it actually will input the using statement that's appropriate. So control dot is your friend. If something's not working, you see an example online, and you're like, but I'm not getting it, and it shows an underline, try control dot, and it'll try and find the nearest using statement to add that library into your code. Exception message is the actual message that we're going to get, the actual exception that you're getting, right? Because I'm getting a general exception here. I'm catching a general exception. So part is I'm going to try and run this code. That's what's in the try block. And then I'm going to catch the exception, a problem that I have. And then what I want to do is there's two options. I can output my exception console, which is my debug.writeline, or I can do a message box.show, which is going to pop up a modal window, a little message box that I can click on and say, okay, what do I want to do? I want to give focus back to my my subtotal box, my subtotal.text box, right? Subtotal. I want to get focus on that thing again, and I want to select all. So the reason why is because I've entered something weird. So I want everything to be selected. So when I go back in there, when I type something again, it'll overwrite what I had over, in there as well. From a UI perspective, it's good coding. Mean is, after I've printed out my message, I want to go back to my subtotal text box. On it. I want to get focus. I want to set the focus to my subtotal text box. Focus is a method that belongs to all controls. Focus, which means I want to activate that object. I want to use the focus method. All right. Again, a little bit advanced for what we're doing today, but it's all necessary stuff for when I do input validation. I want to help you with your assignment. That's why I'm giving you this stuff. Cool. So I got my focus. Next, I want to select all. Right? So how do I do that? Is there a way of select all? So subtotal text box. And I do a select, right? And if you notice, there's a select all method too. What am I saying here? Here's the commands. Get focus, go to my text box, and select everything. Right? So that way, if there's a problem, it'll highlight everything that was in there, clicking on my button. Let's take a look and see if this works. So I'm going back in here. I type in an A, calculate. Matt, it says input error. So we did it kind of the other way around. So invalid data should be down here, and input error should be up there. Let's fix that. But notice when I press OK, box. So whatever I put in there, even if I put in a long string of characters, it's going to say input error, but it's going to highlight everything, so I can just type in the actual number like I meant to, and click calculate. This is a catch-all that I'm using to stop any kind of input errors. It helps us with general input problems. But even if I put another character here, notice that my message box that comes up is incorrect. Let's fix that. So I'm going to click exit. I'm going to go back to my message box and reverse these two. That's all it is. So my message is first, my title bar, or my title comes next. By the way, I can set up things like, how many message box buttons do I have? Do I have an OK cancel? Yes, no, right? I can put a bunch of different buttons, and I can also get the result and poll for the result. We're going to do more on the message box as a tool later on in this course. So don't worry about it. Okay, so we've got the message box. We've got everything that we want. Mostly it's good. There's one problem. I can't press enter. I want to be able to press enter, the enter button, my form as well, not just the calculate button, right? Okay. Let's just X out of this because this part's done. Come back there and fix it. I want to upload to GitHub though, because I've made a major change. I made my calculation work. Changes. Notice that I've updated my invoice, and I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say added calculation and error checking. That's what I've done. Commit all. I'm going to click home, and then push, and that'll push all my changes. So you have all my changes now. All my code, if you missed something, is up online. Please look at my GitHub. Okay. Let's go back to my solution for a second, and let's double click on the design of my form. Okay. So my design of my form itself. If I go to my properties, right, I have something called the accept button. The accept button, gone to it, and I select. I have two buttons. It actually looks for buttons that are on my form. I want to select, and what this is going to do is it's going to say this. When I press enter, it's going to activate my calculate button every time I press enter, right? So instead of having me to go there and click the button, okay? There's also other buttons here, right, that you can also set up on your form. The cancel button, that would be the exit button. So if I press the cancel button, if I press somehow escape, it'll close down the form, right? So to show you what that is, so whenever this button is clicked, it's going to show this thing. So I'm going to say click the exit button. Okay, let's try this out now and see what I'm talking about. Problems, by the way, we're not done if you really think about it with calculation. What if I try and calculate it now with 0 in there, right? That's a problem too. My subtotal, calculate now, it's going to say, meh, invalid data entered because there's nothing in there, right? So theoretically, we should put a value in there. If there's no value, right? If the value that comes back we can't convert somehow, we should, by default, when the form loads, put in a value that we want to replace. Right? Well, we already kind of did that, right? Let's go back in there. First, let me show you the button working. So if I put in 500, it's going to calculate the amount, right? And if I press escape, it's going to close down the application. So the accept button on the form selects which buttons I'm going to click when I press enter. Escape button, when I press the escape button on my keyboard, it's going to select which button is pressed when I press escape. So I can close down my function, which is kind of cool. Okay, let's fix my problem. My problem is there's a couple things I can do. I could set up my subtotal so it has a default value in there, that like 0. 0 is my default value, right? I could, right? Before converting. I want, when I press in there, it's going to have focus, right? Just like we did before. And it's going to select all. So by default, when the form loads this time, set up, and I want to highlight everything. Event, right? It's the form load event, and I'm going to use the form itself to double click this time. So I'm going to double click on the form load event, right? And when I'm going to say something like this. So when the form loads, I want to do two things. I want to use the focus. I want to set focus to the subtotal text box, right? I want to change the subtotal text boxes, right? It's going to equal to 0, right? Because I want at least 0 to be in there, right? Because it won't give me an error. If I try and calculate 0 times 0.1, I'm going to get 0, which is okay. It won't give me an error, right? And then for my subtotal text box, I want to select all. So if I click in there the next time, I will change the value. Subtotal text box got select all. So on load, it's going to do this stuff. Right? Make sense? By the way, guys and girl, I'm giving you guys simple commands, and we're doing everything inside the calculate buttons and all that stuff. Be all and end all, or the most efficient way to do stuff. Theoretically, we could have an adapter class that does it all for us. We're kind of learning to walk before we run. That's why we're doing it this way. Let's try it again. So I'm going to run it. Control F5, run without debugging. So that I have by default my 0 is highlighted, and even if I press enter, it's not going to give me an error anymore, right? The error goes away. I've kind of accounted for someone just pressing enter. If I go in there and I type a value, like for example a weird value like this, and press calculate, it's going to come up with my text box, right? Wouldn't it be good if we could, whenever we calculated that value, so wipe it out, go back to 0. Wouldn't that be nice? That, right? When we loaded the form. There's a couple ways I could do this. I could subtotal form, call the form load event again, but then I have to call the sender object and the event object, which is kind of a pain. Or I can make it custom. Let's do that. off for the day. I know I'm running a little bit behind, but bear with me. I want to highlight these areas here, right? And what I can do is I can go to refactor, and if you notice, I can extract method in my refactoring, right? And I'm going to call this method, right, reset, or some kind of, reset. I'll call it the reset subtotal text box method. Reset subtotal text box. And apply. Got something called reset subtotal text box, which is a method that I could reuse. So instead of me doing this, right, I could just call the reset subtotal text box, because it's exactly the same that I'm doing. Reset subtotal text box. It's a local method that I'm using now, right? So I'm adding a little bit to my code to reuse my.
Sorry, how did you refactor?
So I highlighted everything. I'll do it again. I'll do it again just for you. Watch. Let's refactor. And the other thing I want to do is, my calculate button might have other stuff. So let's refactor all this and put it into a method, right? This, I want to take all this stuff, right? All of this, and I want to put this into its own method outside of my calculate button click method, because maybe I want to do the calculation somewhere else. Maybe I have a menu item that I want to do the calculation, right? So I want to go to edit. This is how I do the refactor. Edit, and I can go to refactor, and the shortcut key is Control R, Control M, and it'll refactor this method, right? So extract method, and then it's going to declare a blank, a new method, which I'm going to call, right, calculate total method. That's what it is. So it's calculate method. It's going to be called, and press apply. Calculate the total. This is the method that's there, and I can always put in by // right, the method, what it does. This method calculates total by multiplying the by the discount percent and then subtracting its value, right? Something like that. And then if I was to actually hover over this, you can see that when I use the calculate total, if I was ever going to try and do that again, right? Typing calculate total, because I'm using a documentation. Take a look at the documentation I'm getting. It tells me what my method does. This is equivalent to Javadoc, or to JSDoc, or UIDoc, right? Right. So that's why we do it. We use that // to do that stuff. Okay. So really solid. That's why we use C# on the back end for the stuff. You can write it very nicely. That's the calculate total. Set out one more time. We have a couple of additional things we added in. If I was going to really be doing this application, for example, for your assignment number 1, each of these methods should have its own little header, right? Because you want to go through each method and kind of give a definition of what it does. For example, my form load event, right? It basically is the load event for this form, right? It's the event handler for the load event for this form. Okay, let's run this thing and see if it works. And then I'll put everything up on GitHub, and then I'll say sayonara today, right? And we'll see you next time, and we'll do more next time. Stuff we handle though. So we can now my subtotal. I can put in my my total. As an example, would be something like, $540, $54, $486 is the total, right? And if I click on right, and press calculate, it says, hey, invalid data enter. Press OK. It wipes it out and makes it back to 0 again. Sorry? The back to 0 part. We've refactored it. Notice that I said, here's my reset total text box. Yeah. When it loads, it does the reset subtotal text box, which is this. Up here, I do it again. So nice and easy. So all I'm doing is reusing my code a couple times. Very, very easy steps. Yes?
When you have separate methods, would you put the events at the bottom?
I love your question. So the question is, if I have separate methods, how would I reorganize my code to make it look nice? Is put all of your, in my opinion, all your public methods, right? Public methods. And by the way, I made them all private right now, right? All the public methods should be at the bottom, right? Private methods should be above them. And then what I would probably do is separate up all my event methods. I would group them together before my actual methods. Right thing to do is if I was going to make my own private methods, like for example, this private reset subtotal text box, right? Underscore in here, okay? In the future, we'll do that later on. Right now, I want to walk before we run. Any other questions? What? Okay. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about why did I put it in there like that, and what if I wanted to show the percent? Put it in physically inside my design. I'm just showing it. It's just. I'm not really doing it. I'm not converting it back. Why would I convert it back? It's always going to be 10%. In our design, if you notice back over here, right? It didn't give me an option for a pull down, right? It just fixed 10%. So that's all I'm calculating. Complicated program, right? It's not like a lot of options. If I wanted to give myself more options, I'd probably have a pull down or some kind of options to decide on different percentages. That's a different program because now my discount percentage will be, I'd have to read what it is, right? I converted it to double because I know I'm going to get, whenever I use multiply by 0.1, I'm going to get some kind of floating point number, right? Or real number, right? Oh, I need to go to double or I need to go to float. Double is the way to go in general because I don't know how big my number is going to be. It's double the length. So I can have a very complex number. Right?
Why does it work? Let's say I have a string.
Yes?
Then I get the arrow message. Then I get 0 on the text box. But we didn't convert the 0 to a double. If we quickly calculate once again, it's going to work.
Because it's going to convert the 0 into a string when I click the enter button. As soon as I click the enter button, it's going to create 0 and create it to a double. What happens when you convert 0 to a double? 0, right? Value 0 is a double, right? We did. No, we converted it to double, and we did it right here. Whenever I click my calculate button, right, I call the calculate total, and in my subtotal right away, I convert it to double. This line here, line 45. I can reset, but I don't do anything with it until I click the calculate button. Calculate button does it convert it, right? This is when I click the calculate button. The event itself is going to continue to fire. Every time I click the calculate button, it's going to reconvert all the time, right? Even if it's the same number. Any other questions? Twice for each line. Okay, well, I'll have to look at your code. Anyone else? Okay, guys, if you have any Slack issues, see me after. I'll see if I can sign you for Slack. If you're not signed up, you can come over. I'll sign you up. If you have any issues, please send me a Slack message. I'll see if I can resolve them. I would urge you to start your assignment number 1 now. Get it done. Get it out of the way. You have other more important things to do. Thank you. See you next week. Yes, right now. Thank you. So let me put that code up before I stop recording, and then I'll answer your question. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to go to home again, changes, updated, no problem. Updated calculations and error checking. Right? Click commit all, click home, and then click sync and push. And when it's done, guys and girl, we'll see you next week. Thank you.